Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. On the one hand, you had the golden-eyed Hu Yuhao. On the other hand, you had the dazzling winged Wang Dong, who'd released his radiant butterfly goddess. In the instant that they released their martial souls, everything within 10 meters of them lit up. An extraordinary light suddenly blossomed outwards from their bodies. That light was very peculiar. It was a bizarre light that alternated between the colors blue, purple, and gold. Its core consisted of a dense aura of light, and it was even fused together with a few different mysterious soul power undulations. An enormous shadow appeared behind Wang Dong's back. It was a complete and magnificent radiant butterfly goddess. On the other hand, an enormous eye with a vertical pupil appeared behind Hu Yuhao. This eye was light gold in color, but its pupil was faintly purple. After blanking out for a brief moment, the two of them came back to their senses. However, they immediately noticed that everything around them was filled with an intense light. The two enormous shadows slowly approached each other in mid-air. As they approached each other, they began to transform. The color of the eye that represented Hu Yuhao's spirit eye gradually turned deeper, and its entire body turned bluish-purple. However, its golden component had vanished completely. The shadow that represented Wang Dong's radiant butterfly goddess started to violently combust as it neared Hu Yuhao's spirit eye. It burned with a bluish-golden flame. In the end, after crossing what seemed to be an entire world, the two martial soul shadows finally touched each other above Hu Yuhao's and Wang Dong's heads. In that instant, their bodies simultaneously shook violently. The howling power that had formed as a result of their fusion erupted like a geyser, draining all of their energy in what seemed to be an instant. The flaming radiant butterfly goddess spread its dazzling wings, slowly hugging the shadow of Hu Yuhao's spirit eye. In that instant, the shadow of the radiant butterfly goddess disappeared, but the bluish-purple spirit eye continued to release a stream of light. The dazzling bluish-golden flame erupted from the shadow of the spirit eye, which slowly descended to protect the two of them. Martial soul fusion skills were always skills that released an extremely large amount of power. This was also their first time trying it out, so they had to undergo the process of two martial souls fusing. Thus, the drain on their soul power and mental energies was extremely large. Furthermore, they had never adapted to a situation like this in the past, so it was no wonder they fainted. They directly collapsed onto the ground, even though they were still hugging each other. A speechless night passed. Daytime gradually arrived. He didn't know whether he'd fainted or fallen asleep, but when Wang Dong woke up, he truly felt like dying. What am I supposed to look at? Once he spoke, Wang Dong subconsciously glanced toward the direction where Hu Yuhao was looking. He couldn't remain calm after seeing what Hu Yuhao saw. To their astonishment, a mysterious trench had appeared in a direction 4 to 5 degrees away from them. This trench was roughly 1.5 meters wide, 30 centimeters deep, and stretched 50 or so meters in a straight line into the distance before quietly disappearing. At this very moment, under the sun's radiance, that dazzling layer of light gold looked like a golden road that had appeared in front of Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong. How could they not be astonished? Was this created by your radiant butterfly goddess? Hu Yuhao asked blankly. Wang Dong was currently still atop Hu Yuhao's body. He subconsciously shook his head. No, absolutely not. Although my martial soul's gold, it's either bright gold or bluish golden. It'd never be a light gold color like this. This looks identical to the color of your spirit eyes. Wang Dong was extremely curious. As a result of this, he quickly stretched his hand out to touch the golden trench. His reaction to it was much greater than Hu Yuhao's. His entire body turned sluggish, and it took a long time for him to come back to his senses. The two looked at each other and saw the astonishment in one another's eyes. Isn't this too awesome? This is just the after effects of our fusion skill, but it felt like I had been struck by your all-out spirit shock. Can you imagine what'd happen if we were hit its full power? Wang Dong's voice was trembling slightly due to his excitement. There were no soul masters who didn't wish to possess a strong soul skill. Hu Yuhao said, "Look, the range of this soul skill should be around 50 meters or so in a straight line, but I'm not sure about whether or not it can single someone out or not. It's extremely strong. I believe that it might even have both mental and destruction attributes, making it a double attribute attack. Only, I'm not sure how many times it increases our attack power by. If someone were to be struck by it at full power, its power would. Hui Yuhao said, look, the range of this soul skill should be around 50 meters, or so in a straight line, but I'm not sure about whether or not it can single someone out or not. It's extremely strong. I believe that it might even have both mental and destruction attributes, making it a double attribute attack. Only, I'm not sure how many times it increases our attack power by. If someone were to be struck by it at full power, its power would. Wang Dong nodded excitedly. Moreover, the strength of this fusion skill will increase as our cultivation increases. This fusion skill of ours is truly tyrannical. If we were to meet the Land Sisters' Imperial Net again, we'd definitely be able to destroy it in an instant. Hui Yuhao was similarly excited, but he was slightly calmer than Wang Dong. Wang Dong, do you think we can use this fusion skill in the assessment? I doubt that a Soul Elder can withstand the amount of power it contains. Wang Dong's face stiffened. That's a good question. An extremely strong skill like this is actually quite problematic. Furthermore, we can only use it once, so we can't even use it to intimidate the others. We'd faint after using it once. Wang Dong was instantly reminded by his actions, and started to think of something. The two then looked each other in the eye and simultaneously let out a cry, immediately running. We're gonna be late again, and it's even when the knockout tournament's about to start. We're gonna be late again. For the sake of getting back to Shrek Academy in the shortest time possible, the two had no choice but to hold hands and run at full speed, activating the vast winter power. Under this situation, not only was the consumption of energy even smaller, it even allowed them to reach their maximum speed. Roughly 30 or so academy teachers, including the old lady Ju Yi, were standing in a line outside the assessment area. Ju Yi currently had an unhappy look in her eyes. She scanned through the nearly 200 students beneath her, but she still couldn't find the people she was looking for. Xiao Xiao was already there, and she was currently waiting with a panicked expression on her face. This was because registration had already started, and in addition to that, it had started with their Class 1. However, Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong weren't there yet. If they didn't manage to make it there before registration ended, they'd be disqualified from the tournament. Without even mentioning what a pity it'd be for them to miss this opportunity, old Lady Ju's rage was something they wouldn't be able to endure. And she, who was part of the same team as Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong, would have to suffer this stroke of bad luck with them. Just what are those two guys doing? They were late yesterday, don't tell me they're going to be late today as well. The number of participating students from Class 1 was greatest among the 10 classes, and as such, the time needed to register them was also the longest among the 10 classes. When it was time for Xiao Xiao's team to be registered, Xiao Xiao was the only person who responded. Unexpectedly, nobody responded to the names Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong. Once this occurred, not only was the entire student body stunned, even the teachers were astonished. Although this wasn't the first time that a situation like this had occurred in the history of Shrek Academy, it was an extremely rare occurrence. Even if they had already passed the freshman assessment, it would seem as if they were looking down on the academy if they didn't turn up for the knockout tournament. As such, they would give an unfavorable impression to all the teachers. The teacher in charge of the registration paused slightly for a moment before continuing to register the students from the other classes. This went on all the way until Class 6, when Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong finally arrived. Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong both ran towards the area between the teachers and students, loudly shouting, reporting in, as they did so. The teacher in charge of the registration immediately paused. This teacher looked 50 or so years old, and had a tall frame. He was dark-skinned and beardless, and had a stern expression on his face. What class are you two from? What happened? Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong both recognized him. This teacher was called Du Weiluan, and he was the director of the Outer Courtyard's Martial Soul Department. He possessed the greatest authority in the Outer Courtyard. Hui Yuhao shouted, reporting in, Teacher Du, we're Class 1's Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong. We were late due to excessive cultivation. Du Weiluan's face darkened. You're even late to the assessment. Have you no concept of time? As a punishment, you'll be sweeping all the corridors of the freshman teaching blocks 2 days after the tournament ends. Return to your team, yes sir. Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong hurriedly replied. They inwardly let out a sigh of relief. As long as they didn't lose their qualification to participate in the tournament, everything else was fine. The two hurriedly walked to the area where Class 1's teams were and stood together with Xiao Xiao. During the journey back, Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong had agreed to keep their martial soul fusion skill a secret for the time being. After all, they weren't planning on using it during the freshman assessment. They agreed to only tell this piece of good news to Teacher Ju, in order to appease her thunderous fury, while letting her give them some advice regarding their cultivations. They'd then show it off in future assessments once they were adept at using it. The director of the Outer Courtyard's Martial Soul Department, Du Weiluan, quickly finished taking attendance, and what followed that was the drawing of lots. This was only a freshman assessment, so there weren't too many complicated procedures involved. Hu Yuhao represented his team to draw lots. The 64 teams involved in the knockout tournament were divided into 32 areas, where they would fight each other. After the lots were drawn, the round of 64 immediately started, and 32 matches were simultaneously held. This way, they could shorten the time used for the tournament and give victorious students ample time to rest for their afternoon match. This time, Hu Yuhao's team was sent to the 15th area. Their proctor had been changed as well. This time, the proctor in charge of them was a 30-or-so-year-old female teacher, who looked extremely good-natured. When they drew lots earlier, they only obtained a number. Hence, they didn't even know who they'd be facing. Once they arrived, they were somewhat speechless. Their opponents in the first match was actually a few of their classmates, resulting in this knockout tournament becoming a civil war. Their three opponents were people who Hu Yuhao's team recognized. One of them had even attempted to challenge Wang Dong. According to Wang Dong, that fellow had been immediately humbled after Wang Dong privately beat him up. Xiao Xiao, you can go back and rest first. You two, follow me. With that, she coldly humphed and turned away. Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong simultaneously felt a chill up their spines. Fortunately, they had already made their preparations. After glancing at each other, they followed Ju Yi. Xiao Xiao could only gaze at them with an expression that said you can fend go for yourselves. This time, Ju Yi unexpectedly brought them straight to her office. As the teacher in charge of Class 1, her office was located in the administration area that was located behind the black and purple buildings of the outer courtyard's teaching blocks, as well as the northern area of the dormitory area. Her office was situated on the first floor, and she was the only person who was currently working there. After following Ju Yi into the office, Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong couldn't help but feel astonished. Unexpectedly, the cold and extremely strict teacher, Ju, had decorated her office in an extremely elegant manner. The walls of her office were painted a light pink color, and her table was made with a special type of wood that was light red. Furthermore, there was a large red sofa that was meant for guests along with a few other decorations. There was also a small door that seemed to lead to a lounge. One had to admit that Shrek Academy treated its teachers relatively well. Even teachers in charge of freshman classes had their own private offices. Since you've passed the freshman assessment, your wings have hardened, and I can't control you anymore. Is that what you think? Let me tell you this. As long as I will it, I can expel you two from the academy with a single word. This world doesn't lack any geniuses, and I've expelled many of them myself. There's only one reason why I would expel a genius, and that's because they weren't suited to become an expert with their personality. Give me a good reason why I shouldn't expel the two of you. Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong glanced at each other, and Wang Dong bumped him, indicating that he should explain. Hu Yuhao could only brace himself and say, Teacher Ju, sorry. We were in the wrong. During these 3 months, he could be considered to have become familiar with Ju Yi's temper. Arguing with her had no benefits. It had just enraged this old lady Ju further. If you had a good attitude, you could receive a smaller punishment. Do you think sorry will cut it? Do you think that being late is just a small matter? Let me tell you this. Being late represents laziness, and laziness at your age is something extremely serious. If you only have this reason to defend yourself, you can screw off. Tell me, I need a logical explanation. Only then did Hu Yuhao respectfully reply, Teacher Ju, please don't be angry. This is what happened. Do you still remember what happened? When we met Huang Chutian's team, they had a pair of twins who were called Lan Susu and Lan Luoluo. Yes. Ju Yi replied. Hui Yuhao continued, during that match, we almost lost because the Lan sisters were able to activate a fusion skill. We were only able to forcefully block that powerful skill of theirs after working hard together. After that, we finally won that match and ended the round-robin tournament with a perfect score. After we got back, we both envied the strength of their fusion skill. Thus, we decided to try it out and see whether our martial souls could fuse. The school doesn't have a class that specializes in fusion skills, so we could only try it out by ourselves. However, who knew that our martial souls would fuse together on our first try? During the fusion process, we fell asleep on Wang Dong's bed, and class had already started by the time we woke up. That's why we were late yesterday. As Hui Yuhao continued his explanation, he clearly felt Wang Dong softly pinch the skin on his waist and twist it 180 degrees. He felt an intense sensation of pain, but he didn't dare to show it. However, his expression immediately stiffened by a bit. A martial soul fusion. Ju Yi was stunned. She didn't think that Hui Yuhao would actually give a reason like this. She subconsciously asked, did you succeed? You're telling me that you actually succeeded when you tried to use a fusion skill. Ju Yi's voice clearly rose in pitch. At the same time, she stood up with an astonished and excited look on her face. Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong nodded simultaneously. Ju Yi excitedly said, quick, let me see. What's your fusion skill? Hui Yuhao replied, Teacher Ju, we still have a match in the afternoon, and we'll completely drain our soul power after using this skill. Ju Yi unhappily said, your energy will be drained the most when you use it for the first time. It won't be that draining when you use it in the future. If soul masters were to faint whenever they released a fusion skill, wouldn't it become a suicidal move? Hurry up. I'll be responsible for helping you recover your soul power, so it won't interfere with your afternoon match. Come, just use it on me. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds passed. Teacher Ju's office was so quiet that even the sound of a needle dropping could be heard, but there were no other movements in the room besides the soul power undulations caused by Hui Yuhao's and Wang Dong's martial souls. Ju Yi widened her eyes as she stared at them. She was already prepared to defend against their attack, but the two of them were just standing there hugging each other without doing anything else. The corner of her eyelid was beginning to twitch. The two of them could feel that something was wrong. In accordance with what had happened yesterday, their soul power should have quickly been drained. Then, a golden road amidst withering resplendence should have been released in a single direction. However, nothing was happening at all. As he looked at Ju Yi's slight confusion, Hui Yuhao hurriedly explained, Teacher Ju, do you remember what I said last time? I told you that my spiritual detection would evolve as my cultivation increases, and after your caring guidance during these 3 months, its range increased to around 50 meters or so. In addition to that, I found a way of concentrating its effects in one direction only, allowing its range to increase even more. On the other hand, the 100 meters that you're currently sensing wasn't done by me alone. Waving her hand, Ju Yi said, fine. You can stop using your skill, I believe you too. Only, there's definitely something that went wrong when you were trying to use your fusion skill. Wait in my office for a while, I'll go bring a teacher who's familiar with fusion skills. I'll get him to dispel your doubts. Old Lady Ju was always a person who made swift and decisive decisions. By the time she had finished speaking, she was already outside, and was walking with quick steps. Once she left, Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong simultaneously let out a sigh of relief. The two of them collapsed onto the sofa, and Hui Yuhao used his left hand to wipe away the sweat on his forehead. Wang Dong wanted to use his left hand as well, but he noticed that Hui Yuhao was still holding it. Release your hand. Wang Dong unhappily freed his hand from Hui Yuhao's grip. He then glared at him, I'm blaming you for this. If it weren't for you insisting on trying our fusion skill out, why else would we be caught by that old lady Ju? We don't really have any secrets now, do we? As their soul powers circulated and fused with one another, it felt somewhat different from yesterday's cultivation. Their soul powers seemed to have become more intimate, and their cultivation speeds, during the initial stages of the fusion, were clearly much faster than they were yesterday. The Haodong power had already appeared in the instant they touched. As they willed it, the Haodong power circulated along their cultivation paths at a speed that was at least 10% faster than yesterday. When they started cultivating, they shut their eyes. As such, they didn't notice that 3 blue, purple, and gold lights had slowly emerged from their palms. These 3 lights revolved around their arms and started to hover around their bodies, and gradually, a layer of color appeared on their bodies. Originally, they were merely planning on recovering some of their soul power. However, they quickly entered a meditative state once their cultivation started, resulting in them losing all awareness of the world. Ju Yi and Wang Yang had known each other for a while. She knew that this action of his signified his nervousness and excitement. Moreover, she was a teacher herself. As such, she could also sense how unusual Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong's current state was. At the very least, she had never seen something like this before. 2 soul masters were unexpectedly cultivating together, and not only did their soul powers not interfere with each other, they even fused together. They could see how quickly they were cultivating from the circulation of the 3 lights, and knew that even a 3-ringed soul elder wouldn't be able to cultivate as fast as them. After completing 36 cycles of cultivation, Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong stopped. The 2 managed to completely recover the soul power they had lost during their earlier match, and they even managed to increase their cultivation levels by a step. The 2 of them simultaneously let out a sigh, slowly retracting their respective soul powers. This then caused the 3 lights revolving around their bodies to slowly dissipate. As they opened their eyes, the 2 felt somewhat refreshed. Their current cultivation speed was simply too satisfying. However, they were quickly startled by the scene in front of them, Teacher Ju, Teacher Wang. To his astonishment, Hu Yuhao saw Ju Yi and Wang Yang seated on chairs not far away from the sofa, fully concentrated on them. Wang Dong was also astonished. Only then did the 2 remember that they were still in Ju Yi's office. Teacher Wang. Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong simultaneously bowed to him respectfully. Wang Yang nodded his head and said, "I've carefully observed your cultivations. In the beginning, I didn't believe what Ju Yi told me, but now, I've realized that I was inexperienced. Now, I can testify to Ju Yi with a 100% certainty that you 2 have completed a martial soul fusion, and that you possess a fusion skill." Ju Yi looked at him with a somewhat astonished expression on her face, but she didn't interrupt him. Wang Yang continued. "Your soul powers are actually so compatible that they didn't even conflict with each other at all when they fused together. Moreover, the fusion even assisted your cultivation. This has never been seen in the 10,000-year records of Shrek Academy. There's only one explanation for this, that is, your martial souls are perfectly compatible, achieving a perfect 100% compatibility rate. Only this legendary occurrence could allow your soul powers to perfectly fuse without any distinctions whatsoever, and allow you to share your cultivation speeds. Congratulations! I can even foresee that you 2 will definitely become chosen of our Shrek Academy in the future." Wang Yang chuckled. "Do you think that fusion skills are ordinary soul skills? How could the activation of a fusion skill be so simple? Your martial souls and energies have to be at their peak conditions for a fusion skill to be activated. This is the first time I've ever seen 2 people with perfect compatibility rates, but according to my experience, there's a fixed resting period for the activation of a martial soul fusion skill. Moreover, you won't be able to activate it during this time period. This period normally lasts 7 days, but that will gradually lessen as your cultivations increase. This will happen all the way until you can completely master your fusion skill." Wang Yang replied, "It's still too early to tell. You'd have to reach rank 70 at the very least to be able to use it freely, as you'd have obtained a martial soul true body by then. This is normally the case for any soul master. However, it's very likely that you 2 have a perfect compatibility rate. Thus, I suggest that you try using your fusion skill every day from now, all the way until it works again. We can then confirm the resting period of your fusion skill. Once you've confirmed the length of this resting period, come find me and let me see what your fusion skill is. I'm very curious as to what it is." With Wang Yang's explanation, Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong were now much more knowledgeable about fusion skills. Ju Yi asked, "Teacher Wang, since they've achieved a perfect compatibility rate for their martial soul fusion, what other benefits does it give besides aiding them in their cultivation?" Ju Yi was actually quite a generous person. She unexpectedly treated them to all of the canteen's top-ranked dishes. The canteen's top-ranked dishes were extraordinarily pricey, and there were new dishes that were priced differently every day. However, their prices were always in gold Seoul coins. There were 2 top-ranked dishes today, and Ju-yi ordered 2 of each, causing the total bill to exceed 60 gold Seoul coins. Teacher Ju, you're spending too much on us. Hui Yu-hao felt a bit bad. Even after all the time he'd spent selling roasted fish, he hadn't even earned a total of 60 gold Seoul coins yet. Ju-yi said, quickly, eat it while it's hot. Don't think that the academy's selling these top-ranked dishes for the sake of making a profit. In reality, the top-ranked dishes are the only dishes in the canteen that cause the academy to suffer a loss. Why? Hui Yu-hao and Wang Dong asked at practically the same time. On the other hand, the soup had a light gold color, and there was nothing inside it, there was only soup. However, its fragrance assaulted one's nose, so much so that it even smelled richer than the stew. There was even the faint smell of medicinal herbs hidden within the soup. Undoubtedly, Hui Yu-hao was unable to tell the names of these dishes. However, Wang Dong hesitated for a moment, then said, Teacher Ju, this stew seems to be made out of the meat of the devil-scale alligator. I can't tell what the soup is made out of, though. Ju-yi nodded and said, You deserve to be called a child from an aristocratic family. You're right. This meat of this stew comes from the devil-scale alligator, which is an extraordinarily strong amphibian soul beast. Eating its meat is a large help to us soul masters, as it can improve our physique and increase the toughness of our meridians. It's a good thing that's quite rare. Only, the meat of the devil-scale alligator is as hard as steel. Thus, it takes an extremely great chef to be able to refine it into something this soft. So let me tell you this. Our Shrek Academy doesn't just have the best teachers on the continent, we have the best chefs as well. An adult devil-scale alligator is at the 1,000-year soul beast rank at the very least. So do you still think that this dish is expensive? As for this soup, it was made by boiling an avian soul beast for a long time, and it has the effect of nourishing one's internal organs. This can make our internal organs more stable, which can benefit our cultivation. Ju-yi said, Okay, you two should quickly start eating. Once you're done, go back and take a small rest. The afternoon match is going to start soon. I'll be reporting this matter to the higher-ups. If you're selected as a core disciple of the outer courtyard, the academy will provide you these top-ranked dishes free of charge. I'm pretty sure you can imagine how much it'll benefit your cultivation. However, possessing a martial soul fusion skill doesn't mean that you'll definitely be selected as a core disciple. Remember, our Shrek Academy has no lack of geniuses. Your final ranking in the knockout tournament will greatly affect your chances at entering the circle of core disciples. Truth is, I managed to graduate from the outer courtyard during my time, but I wasn't able to become a core disciple, much less obtain the qualifications to enter the inner courtyard. But for you too, becoming a core disciple is an important step that'll help you to enter the inner courtyard. Out of all the core disciples that have been in Shrek Academy, over half of them managed to pass the inner courtyard's assessment. Also, becoming a core disciple signifies that you'll receive even more help from academy teachers. Do you understand? Yes. The two replied together. Then, they immediately gorged themselves silly. Hui Yu-hao and Wang Dong immediately acknowledged Ju-yi's praise of the academy's chefs. Hui Yu-hao was still somewhat better, he'd never tried these types of high-ranked foodstuffs before. However, Wang Dong differed from him. He'd eaten these delicacies in the past, but the flavors created by his family's chefs couldn't compare to the dishes cooked by the academy's canteen. Once they finished eating, the two instantly felt their bodies heat up. This was especially true for their stomachs. Waves of warmth spread through their entire bodies, causing an indescribable relaxing feeling to arise. Sure enough, you really got what you paid for. Hui Yu-hao and Wang Dong weren't late this time around. Instead, they came to the assessment area very early to draw their lots, causing Xiao Xiao to sigh in relief. This time, they were assigned to the 8th arena. By the time they arrived at the arena, the other team, who'd been assigned to the 8th arena, as well had already arrived. To Hui Yu-hao's astonishment, their opponents were all girls. Furthermore, they were young ladies who were very pretty. The spectators' stage. Ju-yi quietly stood on the stage, surveying the matches that were about to start. Class 1 had been the biggest winner among the 10 classes during the round-robin tournament, but a few strong students had begun to reveal their true potential and strength when the knockout tournament started. After the round of 32, only 5 teams from Class 1 remained. Although their numbers were greater than those from the other classes, their dominance was no longer that obvious. The round of 32 was extremely crucial. Teacher Ju, are you looking for your seeded team? I've just looked at the lots, and coincidentally, the seeded team you've chosen just so happened to meet up with the seeded team from my class. They're over there at the 8th arena. Say, who do you think will win? A 30-or-so-year-old female teacher had walked up to Ju Yi and spoken with an amused tone. Ju Yi immediately squinted. Mu Jin, do you think that your students will win for sure? Mu Jin's objective had been to enrage and humiliate Ju Yi. Thus, she didn't hesitate to reply after hearing Ju Yi's words. A bet? What are you betting with me? Ju Yi finally stopped ignoring her. Turning around, she spoke with a serious tone. 1 soul bone. Do you dare to bet with me? After hearing the words soul bone, Mu Jin's eyes suddenly shrank. A soul ring was already an extremely precious item to a soul master's, as a soul master needed a soul ring to be able to break through the existence known as a bottleneck. However, soul bones were 100 times more precious than soul rings. Every soul master could fuse with 6 soul bones, which were the skull bone, the torso bone, and the 4 limb bones. Every soul ring could give a soul master 1 skill, while a 100,000-year ring could give 2 skills. In other words, an ordinary soul master, who managed to cultivate his way to the 9-ringed titled Doluor stage, should possess 9 skills. On the other hand, soul bones were a completely different story altogether. Every soul bone would give a soul master another skill, and would drastically increase the strength of the body part it was added to. At this moment, Ju Yi's suggestion of a soul bone was practically her bringing out a fortune to fight with Mu Jin. Hence, how could Mu Jin not be astonished? She didn't understand where Ju Yi's confidence was coming from. A trace of disdain appeared at the corner of Ju Yi's mouth. Get away from me if you're scared. I don't want to smell that nauseating perfume of yours. A fierce light flickered through Mu Jin's eyes. Fine, I'll bet with you. Were you trying to scare me away using empty words? If I lose, I'll give you a soul bone. But if you lose, I want Fan Yu to make me a close combat soul tool. Ju Yi coldly replied, I'm the person who's betting with you, not him. If I lose, I'll give you a soul bone. Mu Jin humphed, I don't want your soul bone. I want Fan Yu to make me a close combat soul tool. Fine, I'll reply on her behalf. A deep voice rang out. A tall figure had already arrived at Ju Yi's side. This was the Soul Tool Department's Fan Yu, who Ju Yi had taken Hu Yu Hao to meet in the past. The girl behind and to her left had short fiery red hair, while her eyes were a rarely seen shade of red. At a glance, she seemed somewhat scary, but if you observed her carefully, you'd notice that her facial features were extremely exquisite. Her skin was jade white, but the gaze in her eyes was extremely cold. She was even comparable to old Lady Ju. On the other hand, the girl on the right contrasted sharply with the girl on the left. A long head of light green hair was draped over her shoulders, while her dark green eyes were filled with warmth. The delicate feeling she emanated caused one to unconsciously feel the need to be tender towards her. The proctor announced, both parties, enter the arena and introduce yourselves. The 6 people from both teams simultaneously entered the wide arena and stood by their respective sides. Hu Yu Hao's team of 3 maintained their original formation, with Wang Dong standing in front, Xiao Xiao in the middle, and Hu Yu Hao right at the back. However, the 3 girls changed their formation a bit. The golden-haired girl, who had originally been standing at the front, now moved to the back, while the other 2 girls simultaneously advanced to protect her. The red-haired girl arrogantly announced, Class 9, Wu Feng. I'm a rank 25 Assault System Soul Grandmaster. Class 1, Wang Dong. I'm a rank 24 Assault System Battle Soul Grandmaster. Class 1, Xiao Xiao. I'm a rank 22 Control System Battle Soul Grandmaster. Hu Yu Hao was the last to introduce himself. Class 1, Hu Yu Hao. I'm a rank 17 Control System Battle Soul Master. After hearing the number 17, Wu Feng curled her lips in a very obvious manner, exposing a look of contempt on her face. Wang Dong slightly squinted his eyes, and fixed his gaze on Wu Feng's body. He didn't know why, but he felt as if a fire had been ignited in his heart when he looked at Wu Feng's disdainful gaze. Wu Feng also sensed his gaze. Their gazes met, and Wu Feng snorted coldly. The smell of gunpowder had already appeared between both parties, even though the match hadn't even started yet. Hu Yuhao patted Wang Dong's shoulder, causing him to look back. Their gazes met, and although nothing was said, they both knew what the other person was thinking. Right at this moment, the proctor loudly shouted, "Match, start." Wang Dong's feet tapped the ground, causing him to shoot off. His dazzling pair of golden wings suddenly unfurled as he charged forward. Regardless of how confident they were, they couldn't help but blink and secretly admire the beauty of his radiant butterfly goddess' brilliant pair of wings the moment they set their eyes onto them. Facing her tyrannical attack, Wang Dong didn't counterattack with a soul skill. Instead, his body half-turned in midair while his right leg shot out like lightning, colliding with Wu Feng's left arm. A muffled bang rang out, and Wang Dong's body was sent flying 5 meters backwards. On the other hand, Wu Feng was forced to the ground. Evidently, Wang Dong was the one who'd suffered a loss during their initial confrontation. Although they were both assault-type soul masters, they had different strong points. In terms of physical strength, the radiant butterfly goddess clearly wouldn't be able to take any advantages from the red dragon. At this exact moment, Nan Menyuna made a move. In the instant she moved, her body was as light as a feather, as if she wasn't affected by gravity. However, her speed vastly exceeded Wang Dong and Wu Feng, who were fighting. With a flash, she crossed several tens of meters and arrived in front of Xiao Xiao. Meanwhile, the distant Ning Tian extended her right hand, shouting with a clear voice, "The 7 treasures revolve to produce a glazed pagoda." Then, she quickly spun around, causing a dazzling 7-colored light to immediately emanate from her body. This then caused a 7-colored pagoda that was a foot tall to appear in the middle of her right palm, where the 7-colored light had gathered. This pagoda flickered with an overflowing amount of color, making it seem as though there were an innumerable number of gems that had been embedded in it. Once it appeared, it drew the attention of everyone standing on the tall stage. Ning Tian's 3 soul rings, which consisted of 2 yellow rings and 1 purple ring, rose from her palm, circling the 7-layered pagoda in a rhythmical manner. Up on the spectator's stage, Mu Jin turned towards Ju Yi and Fan Yu, right in time for her to see the astonishment in their eyes. Ju Yi couldn't help but cry out, "The 7 treasures glazed pagoda of the 9 treasures glazed pagoda clan." If Wang Dong's radiant butterfly goddess was the pinnacle of beauty for beast souls, the pagoda that had appeared within Ning Tian's palm could be considered the pinnacle of elegance for tool souls. Ning Tian's clear voice rang out the instant that the pagoda appeared. "I call upon the first of the 7 treasures, speed." Her first soul ring lit up when she finished saying this, the rich yellow light causing the pagoda to become even more beautiful. Immediately afterwards, 2 dazzling rays of light shot out from the pagoda and landed on the bodies of Wu Feng and Nan Menyuna. Hu Yuhao had activated his spiritual detection at the start of the match, but he discovered, to his astonishment, that he was unexpectedly unable to perceive the circulation of Ning Tian's soul power, nor the soul skill that she was releasing. Ning Tian's dazzling pagoda seemed to be emitting a mysterious soul power undulation, which was protecting her aura from leaking out. Furthermore, it was actually able to block Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection. Just what was this tool soul? It was actually this strong. The scene that followed caused Hu Yuhao's team to become even more startled. Wang Dong's and Xiao Xiao's situation suddenly changed when the 2 rays of light landed on Wu Feng's and Nan Menyuna's bodies. The speed of Nan Menyuna's palms suddenly increased as they swung towards Xiao Xiao, so much so that even a string of consecutive after-images were formed in midair. If Hu Yuhao hadn't had his spiritual detection active, Xiao Xiao might have suffered a great loss from this exchange. The instant that the ray of light had landed on Nan Menyuna, Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection had warned her. At the same time, Hu Yuhao, who was currently standing behind her, had suddenly grabbed the back of her shirt and pulled her out of harm's way. However, she'd only managed to dodge Nan Menyuna's palms despite this. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao had activated her 3-live Soul Crush Cauldron, causing it to descend from the sky with a flash of black light. Once it landed, it caused a violent bang to ring out. Xiao Xiao's first soul ring lit up as her cauldron quake activated. From the start of the round-robin tournament till now, Nan Menyuna could be considered the fastest opponent they'd met. This was even more true since she'd received the boost from Ning Tian's pagoda. Currently, Her speed had completely exceeded the level of Soul Grandmasters. Even agility system Soul Elders might not be able to best her in speed. On the other hand, Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection was even more important during direct combat situations such as this. After missing her attack, Nan Menyuna immediately charged forward. From her viewpoint, she was confident that she could end the battle within the shortest possible amount of time by utilizing her complete dominance in speed. As Hu Yuhao looked at the distant Ning Tian, he was inwardly astonished. What a strong auxiliary system martial soul, and what formidable judgment. She didn't have his spiritual detection, yet she'd instantly been able to judge the changes in the condition of the battle, and had supported her teammates without any hesitation. From the soul skills she'd released so far, Hu Yuhao could tell that her first soul skill greatly increased the speed of her companions, while her second skill could dispel any negative effects or sealing abilities her teammates were afflicted with, thereby returning her teammates to their peak battle states. Regardless of whether it was battle experience or the strength of her martial soul, she completely deserved to be known as a Soul Elder ranked expert. Hu Yuhao was astonished, but Nan Menyuna and Ning Tian were even more astonished than he was. Their astonishment naturally had nothing to do with Hu Yuhao. From their viewpoint, the powerful person was Xiao Xiao, who'd rapidly retreated and released her soul skill. Furthermore, the positioning and timing of the three-live Soul Crush Cauldron had simply been perfect. Furthermore, she'd perfectly controlled Nan Menyuna's soul skill while simultaneously blocking her short-kill attack, and had even narrowly counterattacked, forcing Ning Tian to use her second soul skill. The two girls couldn't help but view Xiao Xiao in a new light. On the other side of the battlefield, Wang Dong and Wu Feng were still stuck in a fierce battle. Both parties had top-ranked beast souls, but Wu Feng had Ning Tian's buff, causing her agility and attack speed to increase. At the same time, she'd released her first soul skill, Dragon Fire. A dense layer of flames had shot out from her body, covering everything within 30 centimeters of her. This made it so that all of her attacks possessed the high temperatures of Dragon Fire, and made things extremely inconvenient for Wang Dong. However, Wang Dong's combat strength wasn't at all inferior to his opponent's. His second soul ring was at the 1,000-year rank, so the increase in power provided by both his soul rings was greater than Wu Feng's. The rarity of his radiant butterfly goddess also surpassed that of her red dragon. Although his opponent's speed was raised, don't forget that he had the assistance of Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection. Whenever he spread his guillotine wings wide, he wasn't put at a disadvantage. Contrarily, he was even able to place himself in an advantageous position by relying on the predictive ability of Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.